Great.
This is not part of the formal meeting, so we're not going to open it up and call to order. As all of you know, certainly the folks in the front row know, the district worked on for many years and proposed to the voters a $60 million capital project that provided improvements to all 7 of our buildings, as well as some significant site improvement that would apply to athletics, music, and some general improvements to the conditions here on the main campus, mostly parking, repaving of Buck Boulevard, fencing, some significant athletic improvements. After that, we determined that we would come back together after the budget this summer and talk about, just get a general dialogue from the board and have it open up to anybody that might join us from the community, as well as have our folks from King and King here to just dialogue about what are the wishes of the board moving forward. Because in the beginning we thought, well, you have choices. Do you go out with the same $60 million project? Do we scale it back and generate an alternative plan to that project? And if so, what does that look like? The facilities committee has been meeting quite regularly. We've had some preliminary conversations. There's been some secondary designs that were of a more scaled back nature. But now is really the first meeting of, I think, several, to kind of talk about what are we going to do, what are the wishes of the board, and before we move forward to go out for to plan for another vote. So maybe I'll just, we'll just open up to some general comments and dialogue from the board, or Craig, if you want to just update us a little bit. Jim King is here from King and King. Craig Daly, most of you know. Corey is a landscape designer. Is that correct, Corey? Is that your title?
That works.
Okay. Those are the folks that we work so closely with through the facilities committee. They're the people that are King and King, as you know, is our board-approved architect, and they've been working on this project with us, as well as the previous projects here at Layton and the current project that's happening right now at Oswego High School that we hope to tour with you folks in 2 weeks, so you can see the progress on the improvements at OHS. I think that the tone, the sense of the board in our last conversations was that no one was really interested in going back out with the same plan. But I'm not going to speak for you. I think that was the sense that a lot of us were getting.
Well,
Jim, you want to jump in?
I think that's what the community was telling us.
Yeah.
Is that they weren't interested, and I think Sam and I even made a comment to it. Is
Yeah.
that we heard from a couple of different people that said that if we could just vote for the improvements and the field and dial it back and
Right.
do something different. So we're trying to listen to what they have to say and peel back a couple layers, see what we can get for the money that would be allowed. We've been moving towards that.
And I think going forward too, like in order to make those kind of decisions, because part of me feels like the things that we did propose, they're all things that we need. They're not things that we're just saying, oh, wouldn't this be great? I mean, they're things that when you do comparisons of, other school districts, even just look at within Oswego County, we're the only district that doesn't have a lot of what they have. And I think that also needs to be more of the discussion in going forward of why we need this, so that those bits of information are known, because I don't think the general public understands how far behind upgrading our facilities we are.
Well, and it's not only is it great for our kids, right, and it offers different opportunities, abilities and stuff, but it puts us in a marketplace where families have a choice.
Right.
Then it lets us be a part of that choice.
Right.
And if we offer the same things as all of the other school districts around us, then it provides us to be in the mix.
Right, because all of the improvements that are being made community-wide, our community is only as good as our school district.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people, and to your point, in your position, when people come in and openly say, we're choosing such and such district over Oswego because of reasons like this, that's something that as a board we have to think about, that how do we strategically make the right decisions in order to...
I think we all agree, and I think the public agreed. People I talked to after the vote was defeated, people I talked to understood that $41 million of that plan was work that needed to be done in the buildings. Work that was mandated and which is needed to keep our buildings in good condition. So I think that people understand that. I think the thing we need to address and work on is the athletic part. And, you know, I missed the last facility meeting, but the one I attended to, King came with a scaled down plan. And I think if we're gonna discuss that, are we gonna show that plan to the rest of the board so we can discuss it?
We can.
I think the only way they can discuss it is going over.
Knowing what we peeled it back to peel more or add some back.
And it's all just a start for
That's
communication,
Yeah,
it's
it's just
discussion,
conversation.
because we're not gonna plan your project, but we can come up with some ideas and suggestions to
Yep.
give to you
And that's what
to
you
look
look
at.
Yeah, there was
So-
some conversation at facilities committee level about what would a scaled back project look like. And one of the options would be to do a major facelift on the existing Wilbur Field footprint. Improvements to baseball and softball field areas, some reconfiguration of the bleacher system on the new, it would be all new because we would not be able to do any improvements that would not include a new press box because it's not up to code. And a lot of the building work, which still exists,
The locker room.
so, yeah, all that support
that we're
athletic
not
work,
moving.
particularly here at Layton, would still happen under the building work. And,
So do we have, I was gonna bring this up earlier, but then I almost sidetracked. Are we talking about having a number that we feel comfortable and then seeing what fits underneath that number?
Well,
Like,
it's
what's the
hard-
process? Do
Yeah,
we do?
the process is more design first, and then
And
they
then-
put a number to each thing, and as you go through those meetings, you get a little bit of a feel for, you know, where's $100,000, what does that equal, what do you
Right,
get?
but I'm
how do
saying
you-
as far as like what we think the public would accept, like a $60 million project or a $40 million, you know what I'm saying? Like, are we doing?
Right.
I think you do what Jim said.
Do the-
You go by project.
Yeah.
And that's how you appeal to people, not
Yeah,
giving
but
them
This
an
is,
amount, because
and that's what we
they don't know
don't,
what they're getting.
right,
Oh,
and we
no, I'm
don't
not
know
saying
what
that.
it
I'm saying
costs
as
to
far as
get.
us deciding what we do.
like,
Right.
is there a not to exceed number that we think?
Right,
we
that we're
would
saying,
live with?
I think the community would be good with this number, and then we say that to you, let's work within this number, these are the things we want, can we
Sure.
get all these, that's what I'm saying.
I think
Now-
they need to understand everything you're putting out there because
Correct.
after, after the project failed and the budget piece was coming out, the regular budget, I had somebody come up to me and say, hey, when are you gonna fix Buccaneer Boulevard? I said, it was in the capital project. I had no idea. Now,
Yeah.
meaning now I don't, I could have.
Now it can cost you 3 times as much because we were gonna get 67% aid to do those parts.
Right, so I guess part of what I'm getting at is they're putting it out there so that people understand it's
Absolutely.
not just a football field.
No.
Right.
It's you
It's
have
far
buildings
from-
that are deteriorating. It's a music room that hasn't been updated since
The building.
the original.
Well, not that long.
What is our position from an aid perspective? Is
It's somewhere between the 62-67%. It does, they have a better gauge, King does, but it's also, it depends on how you put stuff on the campus, where it is on the campus, as to how much aid you can get, and there's a lot of variables.
So we work closely with fiscal advisors, who is your consultant that does the bean counting for the district. We work with them to kind of generate the project. So going back a little backwards to what Sam was saying, 85% plus or minus of the project, the 60 million we proposed, was facility related. Okay, so if you can come to terms with like, you know, there's really not much you're going to be able to change there or want to change on the facility side of things, that gives you an idea of where that bottom number maybe is. And then the other 10% plus or minus was all the field work that we had generated. So we'll go through kind of like a discussion point of where we could make modifications and scale back, and that will kind of give us a little bit of where we're going to focus our attention on the work side of it. But then we present that to fiscal advisors once the board, community, everybody's in kind of an agreement in the process that we're going, and they start working the financial model for it. So just not to belabor it anymore, but there's what's called maximum cost allowances.
Mhm.
And basically that's every kid basically on an aid, a building aid portion generates a number, okay? And that number you add all up by building the number of kids you have in every building, and they provide what the state has as a maximum cost allowances, and it's two-sided. It's construction and it's incidental. Basically, construction covers about 75% of what that kid generates, and incidentals another 25% of what that kid generates.
That's that's per building?
Yes.
So you don't lump it all
Per
together
facility
for the
project.
district, it's per facility. So work at the middle school, got an
It's
allowance.
purely
work
at that population.
Work at Layton's got allowance, work at high school.
But there's a value to both the Layton and OHS
Yes.
campuses being
Yeah,
together.
this is where it kind of gets like
That's the one
the math
nuance,
Right.
game.
different.
Because you get a
Campus
lot of
wide.
students.
Because we presented to state ed department, we said, listen, this is a campus, this isn't a city highway or city road and two separate facilities. So they're allowing us to kind of merge our incidentals, maximum cost allowance, so we can generate what's needed for the site. The reason I say that is because you think construction, you think, okay, I've got construction money, that's gonna be my site and my fields and my sidewalks, and no. Unfortunately, in the law, or at least the way SCD interprets the law, site work is an incidental expense. You would think incidentals, that's my lawyers, my architects, my construction managers, surveys, all the things that go into a project. They also include the construction side, and because that's 25%, we have to be a little tactical in how we manage that and how we phase the work out. That's why I think originally we were looking at 3 or 4 phase project. That was so that that number recoups every 5 years. So say you have $5 million in incidentals, and you spend that the first year, approval, you have to wait 5 years for it to recoup, so that you can spend another $5 million, get your 8 now.
That makes sense. It makes sense.
And we'll get into a lot more of that, especially the fiscal,
That's why.
but it's a pretty detailed, comprehensive scope that we kind of presented originally.
Originally, we were gonna have tonight just be a dialogue, but Nancy, do you have the revised drawing electronically?
I've got hard copies if you want to.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
uh,
that'd be great.
this is what was reviewed by the facility committee.
And this is just the site
Couple
plan,
weeks
this is
ago.
main
The site
campus.
plan.
And the
Yeah.
pieces,
This is just the.
this is the beginning.
Start launch
Yeah.
pad here from the facility.
This looks pretty, we'll start by saying this looks pretty clean, looks like you might be able to put out for
Right,
construction
do we have a
tomorrow,
new
but
number on that?
that's very far from.
I have a new estimate.
Okay.
The plan you're looking at, basically, we were at 60 million. We're approximately 54 million plus or minus with this plan versus the original plan, which had the multiple turf fields.
54, you said?
I'm giving you an approximate. Once we get a direction from you, we'll put more effort into nailing down the actual numbers and be able to present that to you.
And this is the only area where the changes were made, so
Correct.
the
No.
buildings are all the same.
Buildings are all the same. Keep in mind, we had site work at the middle school, which we weren't modifying anything there. And we can talk about that if you want to. And we also had some at, I think, at Minetto, which was a parking lot reconstruction.
Those are still.
Well, we did have some athletic upgrades at the middle school.
We
didn't
did, and
Yeah.
we left
Track and
that
field.
scope,
That's still
yes.
included.
That's
That's
in
still
there.
in there.
Right.
Oh, that's still in
Yeah.
there.
It's still in
All
there.
that,
The only
every other-
changes
Only changes main campus.
is the main campus.
Okay.
And only the site-related items.
Yes.
Site-related items, not the building work at Layton or high school, outside stuff.
Just outside.
Can you walk us through, for the purpose of the audience and the new board members, what the changes are?
So the changes that you're looking at, and I'll start with, actually I'll just give an overview. At the high school, we had in there to reconstruct the high school parking area with drainage up along West Utica Street and at the corner of Liberty Street. So that stayed the same. We're still removing the asphalt in there, reconstructing that parking area.
All the dark gray area?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's
And-
the same footprint, it's just gonna be
Yes.
resurfaced?
Yep. And we'll do some drainage improvements. We'll actually put structures in low spots instead of high spots, stuff like that, so it works a little bit.
You'll see with a lot of this scope, it's really more of a structural restructuring, reconstruction than it is milling and topping, striping.
At the
It's
corner,
pretty extensive.
at the corner of West Utica Street and Hillside Ave, so the opposite side of the high school, you've got 2 existing softball fields, which we would we would maintain there. What we're gonna be doing is cutting in some drainage to improve those, so that way we've got under drainage now going into those fields. Currently, you don't have any real drainage in there, so your dugouts, all that would remain the same, the layout would stay the same, we're just gonna be cutting in and improving some of the drainage for those fields. Buccaneer Boulevard would be completely reconstructed, so asphalt removed, curbing removed, sidewalks, all that, it would go in new along there. Starting at Layton, we've got in there still constructing the basketball courts and the tennis courts, and those are also reconfiguring those courts so that they were in a better for for instruction by having them stacked 3 and 3 as opposed to like 6 in a line. Then with that, we were able to go in and do some additional parking. We're going to gain some parking, maybe about 10 to 15 spaces, not a lot in there, but it reconstructs it so that you've got a drop-off area, kind of isolated. Playscape will have to be relocated. And then kind of in the front of the building, that would be the same thing, reconfiguring the existing parking area that's there. That would be staying pretty much within the existing asphalt limits. We'll be adding a little bit of parking there, about 5 to 10 cars, because all we're really gonna do is restripe it, same footprint. The existing baseball field and then the existing grass play field back here, those are gonna be having some under drains added to them to improve it. And then we've also got new water system going around the facility, so you'll have some yard hydrants, some irrigation systems put in so you can water the fields a little bit easier. Same thing at the softball fields.
So Corey, just to let everyone know that the original plan called for a turf baseball field. This is not turf.
Correct. It's the exact same layout that you have now.
Same dugout,
Same dugout, same backstops, same.
Well, the
everything.
backstops are replaced. Location-wise, they're the same, but I thought, aren't you replacing
thought they were
backstops
new.
there? No?
This has, it's
Okay.
it's just drainage improvements.
Okay.
So we can add those in.
Backing it up so we can lengthen the fields.
Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't gonna be,
It's not even legal right now, right?
it's very short right now. It's I think it's a 300, but we can, but that'll add, we were basically said, let's go back and let's just do drainage improvements on these fields and not really change it. I agree, it does need to be.
We're gonna go work in that field, we wanna back it up.
You gotta make it right,
Yep.
because that offers us the ability to have events. We have to
I agree with
make
you.
that field.
All right, so the baseball field, we're gonna reconstruct and relocate,
Yeah.
correct?
So it'll be full reconstruction.
Well, the other
Corey,
thing with baseball,
wasn't it reconstructed on the other diagram, the other design we had?
Yes, with the turf field,
Yeah,
yes.
so we should
Yes.
go back to that, don't make it a turf field.
But
Yeah.
that
The
location,
footprint
yes.
was regular grass.
well, the other thing with the baseball field, I guess I just don't understand is, how many softball, Rhonda, how many softball teams are there? Like 2?
Right now, we have 2.
Okay, so we have 2 fields for 2 softball teams, but yet there's 4 baseball fields and 1 baseball field. I've always had an issue with us not having enough, I mean, modified used to practice in a cow field beyond the school ball.
Did you hear that, Rhonda?
Right now, Modified uses the JV field, and we had it, so if we were to have a JV team this past year, we would have been able to have them both be on the JV field.
Which is at the 4.
No, which is here, for girls softball.
Oh, for softball.
Baseball,
Okay.
baseball, yes, we have, both of our modified teams are out at the Fort Ontario. Because we have the one field that's shared because we go home and away with varsity
Right.
and JV, so if varsity baseball's home, that means JV's away, and then they flip-flop usually the next day.
Right, I guess has anybody considered doing that? Is adding?
To make one of those softball fields,
Yeah.
baseball field, or
I
at
mean, you
least
have more teams.
have it versatile enough to do both, if you could have different lines, but create a space where we could accommodate that would absolutely make sense.
Right.
We can, you can do it, but they're gonna be overlapping. Right now, you can run 2 softball at the same time. If you put a baseball down in this lower location, you won't, the outfields will overlap. So you wouldn't be able to run a baseball and softball at the same time. You'd have to stagger
In
them.
the old ones, there was two baseball fields here side by side. I wish we had like an overlay that's
Yeah, it used to be right
in
next to it.
The old one we had baseball up here, and then we had a softball, but they were both turf.
Yeah,
So that way you've got to get on there and put more teams on them. As opposed to natural grass, you're kind of limited with how many games, practices, all that you can use the fields for.
So can I interject a little bit? I mean, we're talking a difference of about $6 million in the grand scheme of things. The original proposal fixed a lot of the Buck Boulevard. It opened up more parking spots. It brought our fields generally up to code where we needed to be. Can't remember if there was a practice field that we had in there for baseball. I do believe from the original,
No,
maybe.
There was
No,
marching band practice.
There's a marching band.
Which is gonna be in the outfield.
But
That was
I
the
guess,
outfield.
I guess in the grand scheme of things, when I look at this, what has been taken away in relevance to a $6 million decrease, for me, in my mind, it doesn't make sense. From what we originally proposed at 60 million versus a 54 million, right? I don't know that the public is gonna chew any less on 54 million than they are on 60 million in the grand scheme of things.
this much less.
I can tell you we won't.
Yeah. I think it's.
Right?
I can tell you
54
as a
million is still
taxpayer.
54 million.
It's still $54 million. And the public knows we're headed into next budget year already behind because y'all, the prior board voted for a zero tax increase. We have memories, even though I'm old, we remember,
So
we
mind-
were in trouble for zero tax increases before.
So mind you, I was one that was in favor of that, right? And my purpose for being in favor of that
That's a previous
was
old one.
solely set on the fact that we could ease the pressure on the public from a taxpayer's position to pass a budget that we would be able to invest $45 million into the facilities and the remaining 15 million into sports. That was my position on that. It would ease the burden on the taxpayers. Now, the taxpayers decided at the time, which rightfully so and should have, looked at the capital project as a big number. And then,
With a tax increase.
I understand, with a tax increase coming.
Correct.
So my push was not to have the tax increase coming,
Correct.
to allow the capital project in, so we could assume that from a public standpoint of view and apply that $45 million or $60 million project out to the public. When you talk about it, when you manage your own businesses and your own homes, those are things that you go through every day. It's what you want, what's a nice have in a dream list, right?
Absolutely, I'm not taking a
Those
Disney
two
cruise every
things
year.
don't go together.
You know, they don't, but they do. We already know going into the next school year budget, we're in a deficit because we took money out of reserves. So we're already in the behind for next year.
We don't know that.
You don't.
We don't know that.
History repeats itself, gentlemen, look back.
We do know that there's salary increases next year. And we're gonna have to.
You have to.
But we don't know where we're at. And we put a lot of faith into the good work that has been done in the past to put us in a position to be able to make those decisions. So I have full confidence that the board and Dean's administration is doing everything they can to make sure that we don't go backwards. But we, as a board and an administration, decided strategically that that was a good thing going into last year's budget. Now, we may not have all agreed on the 0%, which we talked about, but the common thing is doing the least amount of a budget or a tax increase to be able to propose.
A tax
This
increase
ca-
for the capital
Absolutely.
project. I understand all that, and I get that. So everybody voted the zero, we passed that budget because it was a zero tax increase. But you're gonna come out with a capital project that you're gonna have a tax increase for. There has to, where's the money coming from?
Absolutely.
It has to come from us.
We know that.
We know this, but my point is, you're gonna come out with this with a tax increase, and the potential that where you're gonna have another budget that's gonna require a tax increase
Yes.
is there.
I guess my point behind it is the variation between 60 million and 54 million.
It's very
for the
little, I
taxpayer
totally
is-
agree,
is
and I
a-
don't think this, I don't know, but my prediction is
You're
a
probably
$54
within a
million
candy bar.
project won't pass either, unfortunately. This county is poor. People have trouble feeding their children. People have trouble making mortgage payments. The county is poor. Not everybody has $100,000 annual incomes. People are still losing jobs. Jobs are not coming here.
But the reality of the situation, I understand like that point of it, the reality of the situation is if we don't make necessary changes to our school district, we're only gonna go further down that road. And it's not gonna improve.
And I get
We're
that.
not gonna be able to
And I get that. You
get
put
the
out what you
families
wanna
that
put
come
out and
here.
see if it passes.
So
That's about all
I think
I've
what this
just,
board's trying to do is create a vision
happy
for the
medium.
future of where we want to go and where do we want to see our school in the future. Because the way it is right now isn't good. And even this right here, in my opinion, we're better off doing nothing than we are doing this. Because this is why spend that much money and get nothing? I mean,
We have to create a draw somehow,
right.
have to come up
from a
with
culture
something.
standpoint.
Craig, would I be correct in assuming that the $6 million savings, which I agree is for what we're giving up, $6 million, it doesn't cut it. Would I be safe in assuming that part of that is because now we put this project out another year at least, and construction costs are going to be increasing? So as you
There's
build- as you build
escalation
this
built into
number-
that. I mean, we've lost basically a year
Right. So
from
if
their
we'd have done
schedule,
this
so
for
there's a year's
$54
worth,
million,
5% escalation that's in there as well.
And the longer we can go out, the more it's going to cost.
It does.
Somewhere between like 3 and 5% per year is probably where you're at
Yes.
with the growth of it.
I think I used
If there
4
was zero
just to break
inflation,
it.
so if there was zero inflation, it would have been 50.
I know.
Do you want to
Well, I said, no, I'm
review
gonna
what
take
we
the
went out for?
Yeah, I think that's.
This is the
I think so, yeah.
Let
I'm sorry, Tom.
Tom wanted to speak.
No, I know, I'm good.
Can you hold your thought for a
I
minute?
can hold it for a little bit. The ability to hold it is difficult at this age, but go ahead.
We're talking.
This is the board that represents the main campus. This was the $60 million proposal, which included the multipurpose field with parking over on the existing softball and soccer area, a repurposing of this area with a new track, varsity baseball reconfigured with an overlay for Marching Buccaneers, and softball, and then the reconfigurations that are still there for basketball and tennis, and all the same dark gray site work, except for the new parking at the multi-purpose field. And then all the building work was the same, including the improvements in athletics at the middle school for track and field events, and a new track.
Correct.
So
it was
that's what we were looking for.
Reconstruction of your existing track.
Yes, and that was it for 60, and that's,
Yeah, basically we've reconfigured the track to a 3-lane, synthetic turf on the inside of that, so you'd be able to do multiple sports on it. But other than that, you're right, all the other field configurations are the same. Adding drainage, planarity improvements, so if you got some dips and everything in the outfield, it would adjust those. And then redoing the parking, but other than that, you're correct. And parking over back at the high school would be lost, which was that was your main gain in parking for this project.
Is there a reason why, and this is just a question, obviously, with the turf field on that proposal, why it had to get moved from there rather than stay right where our field is now?
The one down, by having it behind the high school, I was able to do a 225 by 360 foot soccer field, which is like the largest soccer field for high school play, with an appropriate overplay for it. And you're able to get bleachers, and then it got parking right there. We've done scenarios, and if you guys need them all again, I can send them. But it did have scenarios where it showed it up behind the high school, or behind Layton Elementary where the existing track is.
Yeah.
in all honesty, this is probably we're probably around 40 different options that we've done, and that was one of the iterations that was looked at. I mean, another one like on the board behind it was, let's have turf baseball, turf softball, and then natural grass baseball, natural grass softball, and then keep what's shown there behind the high school is the same, with the thoughts of, let's get all of your baseball and softball sports to one main campus area, get all the teams, the shared equipment, everything else. And then over at the middle school, that would be your primary track and field facility. And then on that sketch, like instead of having a track, we had it kind of measured out for, here's what a quarter mile would be, a half mile, 1 mile. So that way the community and also students in PE would be able to use that, instead of having a walking track there.
Is there a large amount of money that we save by not having to do that ladder system? By moving the all-purpose down at the corner of Hillside and Utica? I know it was some extensive engineering that it took to put under that field. Are we away from that ladder system by moving the field up there?
No, we just have to change the location of where that is gonna be.
You're still in the floodplain.
You still have to
Yeah,
manage your runoff.
I still have to put that on that subsurface system. It'll just be, it would probably be under mini Wilbur Field, to be honest. Just that way it's outside of where the turf would be. I try to keep it outside of there for maintenance purposes.
So does everybody realize that this is, when you talk about the athletic fields and the improvements, you're talking about 25% of the total 60 million in general, right? So any deletions or anything,
15, yeah.
10%.
10 to 15 of the grand total, right? So when you're talking about removing stuff, it doesn't remove a big portion of that $60 million cost.
Correct.
And when you reference that back to what a taxpayer is gonna pay, you're talking cents. You're not talking dollars, you're probably talking cents.
I'm not
at the end
denying
of the
this
day.
is beautiful. I'm not denying that this
But
district needs it. I'm just saying, I don't know that the community can afford it.
I
Can we
agree.
do a GoFundMe? Are we allowed to, do a GoFundMe? Because then the people that can afford it will pay for it.
So-
Not
you-
people who are getting foreclosure notices.
I think our focus, and this is just me, I want to focus on the $45 million of where it's going and not focus on the 25 million that's going into this portion of it, right? The taxpayers, and I think we've done a good job, I believe, to Sam's point, of trying to get that out there. I think we need to do more than that. I think that this is not the board's focus, is to change the athletic fields and add all these things. From my perspective, the thing that I need, or we need, is the $45 million upgrades to the rest of the buildings and facade and all the other stuff that we need. This comes along with it, right? So from a big package standpoint of view, this entices me to want to come to Oswego. Not this, but all the upgrades to the schools and all the other things that we need. We need to talk more about the $45 million, not the $25 million, and removing $4 or $5 million from a capital project that at the end of the day, you're gonna miss out on 45 because you just threw out 5.
I mean, the difference of 60 to the whatever is a joke.
It's a joke.
You heard me chuckle when the number came out.
Yeah,
It is a joke.
I agree.
It's not gonna make a difference in the vote. It isn't. Education, educating the voters, I agree. The buildings need the work. The internal has to be done. Unfortunately, in the years past, it wasn't kept up. And so therefore, that's why we're in this mess that we're in. But I
Let me ask you,
just-
let me ask you a question, just because your opinion comes out, just because the honest opinion. So if you took this off the board completely, you made it 0, meaning that, took that part's gone. So it's just the buildings at 45, you still think that's a,
What's the tax increase number
Right, but say
that
it's-
goes with it? Because that's, people need to know how much more are they gonna have to pay.
right?
Not
And
that
that goes to
big
my point
number.
that I made.
That's
What's
what
the
they,
dollar amount?
what's the dollar amount?
That the community would accept.
Okay,
And then
they're
work on
gonna
it.
say $200, right? That's what they're gonna say.
But I think, but that's where our job is to sell them on this is a community thing, this isn't even just a school district
Sell them
thing.
at a
This is to improve our
1.5%
entire
increase or something.
community.
You're not gonna sell on a 4% increase.
You also have to, everybody gives this
Exactly.
Right? This is a 15-year,
Right.
long-term plan. As our debt falls off, it allows us to borrow money
Right.
to continue the project, for us to look forward for 15 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, so if I told you that it was $4 million this year, and then $4 million next year, and then did that, does that sound better?
Yeah.
Because what it does, it's not just we're slamming it down the throat, we're not trying to get that, what we're trying to do is prepare the school to grow the community, right? That's what this is about.
And that,
Our community is.
I think both of your points, that's where the education piece comes in. And that the community needs to completely understand that whole process and what the dollar amount is and how how that whole thing rolls out. And I think that's what was not understood the first time around. And I think that they focused on the number, which understandably so, it is a big number. But if you don't understand how it works, that's where the problem lies.
I think a lot of people in the community were shell-shocked by the dollar, and they weren't listening to the message.
Correct.
They were just like, holy
And they
crap.
saw that picture. That's the picture they saw. They saw athletic fields and they thought $60 million athletic fields.
That's what they typed.
They totally ignored all the improvements that are absolutely necessary in the buildings. Things are crumbling around people. It has to be fixed.
They saw
That's
that.
the stuff
They
they're
saw
not
that we
seeing.
don't have kids to field a football team, what do you do?
That's what they saw.
That's what they saw.
That's what they saw.
I mean, we're only, this is what I've received, Tom and I didn't receive, the other improvements for the other buildings.
Oh, it's extensive.
It was all
And it
over.
was very well, it's extensive.
That's, Kathleen, I was just gonna say the same thing. I feel like, Dean, every time we were talking about, this is the only thing that ever got shown.
Right.
I think if you were showing a picture of the old lockers at the middle school with the rusted
Well, we
bottom,
did that.
We did.
It was
We
in
did
there.
do that.
and like the big posters, like maybe
Yeah.
these are, they're the posters instead of
The
that.
posters
Yes.
were in every lobby of every school. We did presentations in every school.
These
But didn't it
posters
have
were in the
the-
The
lobbies.
power,
Yes.
no, of each building specifically.
But didn't they have the
Each
ones
building
Every
that are?
building had their own.
I get what you're saying.
I didn't see them, I saw
Yeah.
that.
I would say that.
But I
was-
do
that
think we
was
gotta
the
listen
face
to
of
what-
the capital.
what these guys are saying, because if they weren't on the board at the time, she wasn't on the board.
Yeah, that's
we
what
could've
they're-
got- This is what they saw. So if that's what they saw,
Yeah.
that's what they saw.
Right, yeah.
And that's what people told me they saw. I mean, I didn't see that. I was here at every meeting. I knew where all
I
the
think we
money
should
was
make little
going.
barrel things and put them all over the place saying, this is part of the
Rhonda?
But I also think that, and it was interchangeable, is that people assume that the multi-purpose field is a football field. It's not a football field.
Right.
If, we do have a football team, however, if we didn't have a football team, we literally play 7 games. You are regulated where you play 7 games a season. Half of those, whether it's 3 some years or 4 some years, those are the games that you have at home. Other than that, we have soccer, we have marching band, we have lacrosse. They actually, for their season, because they can have 3 games at least a week, football, you can only have 1 every 7 days. So, but the big thing too, is that's a huge instructional space.
Yes.
So when you have classes, like phys ed classes, which all kids K through 12 have to take, that's a huge instructional space. Those spaces can be used by science classes. We see kids out there measuring nowadays with yardsticks out on auxiliary field. Like, that's what we have to really hone in on, that is that most of that space, that multi-purpose field, is an educational space that could be used for marching band and athletics. Like, we gotta highlight it that way, because there are science classes out there, and like I said, that's what it really is, because on the day-to-day grind, those kids are gonna have the opportunities to be out there, because we know what our inclement weather is. It's beautiful now, but it's gonna be an opportunity for those kids to be able to be not encased in gymnasiums all year long.
I mean, I agree, it's all in how it's presented, 100%. Because like I said, when I started off the whole thing, these are not wants, they're needs. For us to be competitive with surrounding school districts, for us to entice, good families to move here, to stay here. These are their needs, not wants. And I think that is what needs to be impressed upon to the community. I mean, whether we did comparison photos of other surrounding schools, whatever, but they're needs.
I disagree in the sense that the needs are the educational and the to the facilities and upgrading there. But these are wants, because the pared down version could take care of a lot of stuff. And I don't think that anything is gonna sell the school district better than the success of our students. And I think that as much as I want this, and I do, and I believe it's our job to sell it, and I'm to present it, I don't want to take sell in there, to present it in a way that the community will understand it. I think that we have to do that, but we have to, unfortunately, we buy with our eyes. We buy with what we see, and the biggest picture we got was that, right? So, what we really need to sell is maintaining the core infrastructure of this school system to give the education that everyone needs, and this is an ancillary, what things this will do is offer ancillary benefits. But I think that, I just, when I hear we need it to get people in, or we have to do this, I think the success of our students will do that, more so, I think, than that. But believe me, I want this, and I want to get it, but I want to keep it in perspective.
I agree completely, Tom, and that's, I'm glad you said it, because that's what I keep thinking is, the facilities, that's appearances, and that's one thing, but the substance counts just as much, if not more. That's what brings people in. If you have quality schools, it's not
High graduation
it's not flowers
rates.
outside. Yeah, and it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this isn't important. I mean, I go to these fields and other districts too, but it's perspective, and you have to, what we're charged with is not just,
But we're the whole
That's their
package.
job. It
is,
We're
it's
the
the
whole
whole
package, and,
Right.
and we're the only package in the surrounding area that doesn't have some of the amenities that every other school does.
You
And I'm
can't
just
have
saying, is how we
everything.
address that with the public, how we address it with the community is vital in terms of that, because as soon as we come up with this part first, you're showing the icing on the cake, but you're not showing what the cake's made of. And that's what they're gonna say.
I think that the reason the facilities committee
Yeah,
decided
that's what this is.
to
We're talking about
backpedal,
facilities.
yeah, to
That's why we're
backpedal on
discussing.
this a little bit and ask for some preliminary consideration to a scale back was because I think we all heard after the capital project vote, at least many of us did, if you'd broken it out
Yeah.
and done the building work without this, we'd have voted for it.
Yeah.
But we knew strategically if we didn't include it, it was never gonna get passed. So
Well, it was all part of the 15-year look,
Right.
right? It was part of planning for the roof that we know is gonna be gone in 5 years, and we can replace it then, and that was all part of the look and the plan, to not be in the situation that we are now.
And I think that's the angle you have to do, selling, this community, preparing this district for the future, and looking ahead and all the needs we have to do, and address those first.
He made himself available how many times? Over 20 times, and many times he sat in the room and be like,
Yeah.
because
It was us then.
It was crisis. Sure.
Yeah.
I do want to keep in your thought process with this whole thing too, that a lot of this still has to happen. Part of our building condition surveys that the state requires us to do is not only your facilities, it's your grounds. So things like, the fields that have just been played and played and played, there's safety concerns that are gonna have to be addressed. Your pavements, whether you mill and top or you do it right and reconstruct it so it's a 50-year system or a 40-year system, are gonna have to be addressed. So keep that in mind, that there's bits and pieces of this that are gonna carry through.
And I think that's great.
Regardless, so you're aware.
I think that's great, because that mitigates the impression of this, and says it's more to function and to maintenance that we have to do. It goes to mandate, which feeds directly in, the educational piece of that. So I agree.
Drive down Buccaneer Boulevard, that'll tell you something. I'm telling you.
Tom, Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, but this that we're looking at with the athletic fields, et cetera, that portion of what the taxpayers were paying on a $100,000 house was, the cost of that would have been 79 cents a month.
Per thousand.
I think it was
Or was it
38.
$38
$37.
for $100,000.
That was for everything.
Per year.
But that was
Just
for the
this
whole
portion of it.
program. What Tom is saying is just this part.
Yeah.
was a small percentage of that $37.
Yes.
Oh, you're talking, that you broke it down to there? Okay, yeah, I never heard.
But
those numbers.
I don't remember what the figures
And
are,
those
Tom.
all the things that everybody's bringing up, these are all things that, like, lesson learned, and the message needs to be different the second time around. Because people didn't get it, they saw the number, they focused on the number, they didn't see the need, they didn't understand how it broke down, they didn't understand how much was aidable, how much it was gonna cost.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that we need to go out, because I still, when you compare us to other districts, as Jim just said, I stand firm that they are all needs. It's a whole package. I get that with, what goes on in the building, that's the number one thing, but at the end of the day, when people are making a decision to, whether they get a job at Novellus, are they gonna stay at Oswego or go to Beeville, if we don't sell the whole package, they're gonna continue to choose Beeville over Oswego. So I think, and it's a 15-year project, we're thinking about the future, we're being visionaries. We're not gonna do it halfway because we're gonna take $6,000 off the cost. We're gonna do the whole thing, because we need to do the whole thing, and we're gonna spread it out over 15 years. And it is what it is. I mean, why would we do it part of the way? It doesn't make sense to me. It's not, no one would do that in their own home.
Two thoughts. One would be, what if you were to, and just wondering if this would help to kind of market it, is what if you were to take this and say this is Proposition 1, it's $6 million less, this is what it would cost, and you got Proposition 2 for that, so that way people could see
I wouldn't even talk about
how much extra it is.
I wouldn't even talk about this.
That one helps?
I wouldn't talk about either one of these things. Because anybody that you roll out to in the public right now, to their point, and I agree with them, saw that.
Right.
I'm not worried about that.
Right.
I'm worried about putting out there a $60 million budget along with what in the big picture over the 15 years of what we're gonna do to the district. I wouldn't even throw this out there if it was me to roll it out again. Because you're setting yourself up for failure. I don't care if you show that picture or you show that picture. They're still seeing that at $60 million.
And that's not necessary. It is necessary, but they don't think it is.
And I think to Amy's point, the repackaging of this, to even breaking down the impact. Say for example, to the old model, it was $38. Well, $18 of that was facilities per 100,000. $10 of that was mandated facility grounds work that needed to be done, and $5 of it was, or the remainder was what was going in for program needs requests. So even then, it sets another. Oh, okay.
Right. It makes it understandable. I mean, when we sit around and we talk about this on a regular basis, and so we get it, but the general public doesn't get it. So we have to break it down and make it very simplified so they understand
what this dollar covers, what that dollar covers, what this dollar
very crystal
covers.
clear.
You have to do it for them that way, because they're very concerned about where their money goes.
As they should.
And they also felt like the board was manipulating them by putting out the 0%.
Yes.
And then putting this out. Well, if we do this, then they'll do
What's
this.
coming?
And they felt manipulated.
I know, they're not trusting what we're saying.
Exactly.
And so we have to figure out a way to say, this is what we gotta do.
Jim?
I agree.
Just a point, I think we already touched on it, but just so you realize that if you put the exact same project up, it's not 60 million.
No,
It's more.
No, it's not one.
So think about that, and you said it earlier, 3 to 5% inflation per year. So if it's 5, it's 63. So again, it's not to put any pressure on anybody, but you either, if you want to maintain it at where you were, you're going to have to reduce scope no matter what, or the number's going to go up. So just keep that in mind.
Do you have the other stuff for the other buildings, those improvements? Do you have that?
We have it broken down.
I don't have it here.
We have it
We
broken
did
down by
that
building.
to Nancy and
I think listening to the conversation, there's a lot of, if you want to point at that, and I'll stop pointing at it, but a lot of what's over there is infrastructure. Corey just said it. So if you talk about the infrastructure at this site or any other site, somebody early on, I think Amy said, the building infrastructure needs to be maintained. Well, the building infrastructure includes everything on that site.
But not to this point, and I'm not focusing on that, but it kind of go around Tom DeCastro over there. Tom, you were part of that, as you said, for years, so that was a long, drawn out.
Yep.
It wasn't just thought up of overnight.
Exactly.
Right. No, and there's been multiple, almost any option I think that you can come up with sitting here today has been looked at twice before,
Right.
or maybe 3 times before.
Right.
So there's, Corey sat here and said, I think he got 30 or 40 different boards that look like that are different than that.
And-
So
and-
every option really, I think is.
Amy, one of the things you said that you wouldn't do that with your own home, but I think in this community, people do get to do that with their own home, they focus on one thing, you
Your
know, oh,
budget.
my kitchen's really bad, right.
Dictate. Your
It's
budget will dictate what you can do.
Right, you
Exactly.
can't just do everything in your home that you want to do.
We just don't know
I
what
mean,
the
no, my
tolerance of the
point was
budget
if
is,
you're gonna
right?
do
What
it,
can
you're
it
gonna
be?
do it right, you're not
What-
gonna do,
Yeah.
you wouldn't say my bathroom's not working, well, I'll hire, you know, the kid next door to come in and, you know, just bring my, you'd do it right, that's my point, most people would, I mean, I wouldn't
Yep.
cut corners, that's what I'm saying, I don't think we should, if we're gonna do it, we do it right, we don't cut corners, that's my point.
The thing is, now, public knows what we're talking about, doing the work that needs to be done in our buildings. And we're also talking about an athletic complex of some sort. So if you go out there and don't point those things out, they're not stupid. They know that it's already been out there, they already know what we're talking about it. And if you give them a number, they're gonna want you to break it down and say, well, what's this?
I never said that,
And they
we
deserve
weren't
to
gonna
know
break
that.
it down.
And I think Dean did a very good job of that during our presentations. It was very well laid out.
It was all there, it was just, it's
The
confusing.
problem was
Can I
they
just say
saw
something?
that picture before he took the floor anywhere.
Well, they didn't
and
come to the floor.
Buy it.
Yeah.
Well, they
But-
didn't want to, they saw that picture,
But
they
you're-
didn't want to hear anything else.
Can I say one thing? You probably did too good a job, because there's so much information.
Exactly.
That it becomes, let me tell you, the difference is.
I'm writing that down.
I'm serious. No, let me just do it this way, because it's something I can relate to. When you watch a medical spot on TV, you get the main part of the feel good, isn't that nice? Then you get all the legal. What they got was all the legal.
Right.
And what they saw at the top was the thing we won't point to, right? So I think it's important, and I go back to that, Craig, in terms of the infrastructure portion of it. And if that's gonna be in it too, if that even draws down the cost for the icing even more, it's much easier to let people know what it's all about. You know, it's things that we have to do that are gonna increase the ability of kids to perform, and safety is gonna be up there at number one as well, and have longevity, so it's a good investment, a sound investment now for the future. So I love the idea of knowing that that infrastructure aspect is underneath that. But I think that's it. If there's too much information, they're overwhelmed. I like the thing picture about it. That's what told me everything I needed to know.
Right, that's what they want.
Last year, we had meetings at, like, all the schools, and when we would go, the principal, whoever, they kind of said, oh, that's what you see it, and that we kind of see. So we got to see it through the tours and such, and Melissa said too, we all knew it, so I guess your point on maybe explaining and just focusing on the other is.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be clear in the way we present it, the need aspect of it, how it fits into the educational plan and what it does for it, and then, again, the ancillary benefits, which are going to be the draw of it. You know, but I think when we present it, it has to be in such a way that, and honestly, straight up, this is what it is, and we have to do it. It's a necessity.
And I just also want to say, our district has done capital projects right along. I mean, these guys have been working for the district for like 85 years, right?
No, not quite, but.
I mean, there's always been capital projects. There's always been for years and years. So we were maintaining, the district was maintaining what they needed to at the time when they, when they had money. So I don't want to say that nobody was,
No, there's a life expectancy of any of the buildings and what they can tolerate.
Just like
and-
your home.
And
Yeah.
remember, we did a major capital project, 2010, that put all the original single points of entry in all the schools, new lobbies, a lot of improvements with HVAC, flooring,
Kitchens.
site work, parking lots at Minetto, a lot of work, windows. And then we did another pretty significant project in 2012. And we talked a lot about this during those presentations, that the work that we do is always driven by the building condition survey, and there are high priority items that we always skim off the top. And we had that question in one of the, remember, Jen, the guy that said, instead of showing us a picture of a leaky fountain, why didn't you just fix it? Well, because we were putting new windows that
Exactly.
paint over the rusty lockers, it'll be fine.
Right.
Because
Right.
they weren't the high priority items, but the lower priority items continue to surface to the top. And as long as we drive these projects with our building condition survey, which is what the work is in the 7 schools, outside of all this, there's always gonna be a need for capital projects.
And I also think you need to remind people, there's 7 schools. We're not talking one house.
You put 450 to 500 kids in a building every single day for 186 days. That's a lot of toilet flushing. It's a lot.
Right, and that's, honest to God, but that's some of the things you have to remind people about, because they get, they don't get that big picture, they compare to their one house.
Agreed.
But I think also using the term athletic complex kind of creates this vision of like you're going to MBT Stadium to watch.
Yes.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So
Yeah. You
you're
gotta
really
stop
not,
using
it's
that.
not an athletic complex. Like they said, it's need for facilities. Like right now, our track out at the middle school is at the point of where it's almost deemed unsafe. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
people don't know that. No, we're not just trying to, all the glitters is gold. We're actually trying to attend to things that it's really getting borderline for safety, for it to be closed.
Yeah.
So.
And that, I mean, yeah, don't use that term athletic complex
Right.
at all. It's all facilities work. It's all facilities work.
Last week, there was a training on safety and security for outside events. And Nancy attended with our security folks. And at the end of that, the training was at Beeville. And at the end of that was a tour of the new Beeville athletic facilities. And so I drove up for that, because that's a King and King project. And I was able to tour not only they have a freestanding restroom and concession building that sits adjacent to the, I hate the word stadium, but to the
Well, that's what
It's
they
stadium.
have.
It's a stadium.
bleachers,
They have.
the bleachers they're bleachers that overlook their turf field. And we had some nice conversation with the ED, and he said that project failed 3 times. And they did it in phases. They actually built the concession and restroom building first, before they did the field and the stadium seating. And my takeaway from that visit was that it was beautiful and functional, but not elaborate. Is that safe
Oh, yeah.
to say, Craig, from other projects you've done? Really, really nice, and would give us everything we needed, but it was just a snapshot of what some other districts have done. But it wasn't like, wow, but it was beautiful.
Is
And I
there,
think that's what we're lacking, is the functionality of what we have currently.
Yeah.
Wasn't there, tell me if I'm remembering this wrong, isn't there something, like with the first diagram, that one over there, that if it's connected to a building, there's more aid or something like that?
You're getting aid on it, is that incidental maximum cost line, which I talked about.
Because it's where it
It's part
is,
of your
it's
school
connected.
district, it's under the incidental side. So,
Not
yes.
because of where it is. Why am I remembering?
I think
If
you're
you
talking
want
about-
to do something at the fort or something, in the district cycle, we're gonna rebuild these, play fields. You're not gonna get any money from the state. It's
No,
dollars.
I thought there was something where if that was connected to the high school itself, to the
Building.
gym.
Oh,
Yeah.
buildings?
Building addition.
Building
and
additions.
standalone.
Yeah, good,
Yeah.
because they
Then
can
that
sit in the
is
classroom.
Yes, as long as there's
Yes.
classrooms in it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm sorry.
It was like the ed center
It's-
down here.
That's exactly right.
The ed center
It's
down
that,
here.
Okay.
it's a classroom.
So did that first diagram, was that kind of connected so that we
That
could?
was standalone on
Fall
it,
into
which
that?
is part of the cost that was local. Because we were building the bleachers, which are covered, but we're putting under it the locker room, team lockers, toilet facilities, so that was a standalone facility.
Okay, so if you had a tunnel going to the building.
No,
would that
so
count?
you don't have to. because, no,
Underground-
no,
underground tunnel.
Purpose Field
Save
is
money.
a training and teaching facility.
Right.
That's how they put that together with the locker rooms underneath. That's how they, I believe
So
that's how we got
well,
there.
that's why in this new version, we're trying to take more advantage of Lakeland's proximity to that field, so we can try to make some of those interior renovations for locker rooms and team rooms part of that, so those will be aided. But as we had it originally planned, that facility underneath the bleachers was not needed. We're not going to get stadium.
I don't mean to interrupt, I think this has been an awesome workshop, but we have, our So I think what I would like to do, we just said we should set another meeting that's open to the public, so we can continue this conversation on a different day than a board meeting, so that we have, if we go over, we can accommodate all of the questions.
What information do we want before we end that? Are we just gonna come back and carry on from where we are, or we need?
Do you want us to continue with the facilities committee?
Jim's got a suggestion.
I just was gonna suggest, would it help, listening to this conversation, to go back to the original, and I very definitely heard this woman here. I'll go back to the original project and look at it differently relative to what is really infrastructure need,
Right.
Yes.
and then what else is left.
Right.
And just to give you that information as another thing, some other things to think about.
Yep.
Then we'll just use the original project scope and go back to that and just split it out and say, Buck Boulevard isn't really anything to do with the fact that it happens to cut this campus in half, but it's really infrastructure tied to the high school or late. And the parking lot and the bus loops, those are infrastructure that are really tied to the buildings, not to whatever you want to call the site ultimately being presented. Just to give you that piece of information, so you can see the real breakdown of the 60 million, would that at least help?
I think that would, and if you could piece it, like you're gonna have a huge infrastructure number, but then if you could piece it to say,
Well, we could peel off the
baseball
other
fields
pieces.
here,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
all-purpose field, this.
We had a
is
per
what this
building
is.
number, but I'm hearing you say that number, we need the new numbers.
Yeah.
But again, when I look at, and this is where it's a little bit maybe gray or not black and white, if I look at one of the fields, pick a field, doesn't matter which one, is drainage and safety and watering and maintenance infrastructure, in my mind it could be, and then if you decide I'm gonna put a synthetic material on top versus natural grass, that might be the piece that somebody could argue, and I heard both ways here, either that's a need or a want. So we could break it down probably that fine, and I'm looking at Corey because a lot of it's gonna relate to the site-related pieces at the fields. The paving and the parking and those kind of things, I think that's easily described as infrastructure, because we're improving traffic flow, improving student safety, we're allowing the parents a drop-off point, buses and cars and service are separated, et cetera.
That'd be good.
So at least we can give you that information as a starting point.
A tool for you to talk about and think about, at least even if it was percentage-wise. Because
Right.
at the town's point, we don't want to give you, say, well, we want you to know what you have to do, what's mandated, and then what is, like
Right.
Jim is saying,
Needs and wants.
a decision.
And somebody can go one way or the other, whether it's a need or a want, that's your decision. That's the community's decision as to how you want to look at it.
How much time do you need to do that and to put those numbers together and what's our available? I think we should nail a date down
I
right
think
now.
so, while we're all
You want
sitting. Yeah.
Yeah. So we want a freestanding capital project workshop that's open to the public, not on a board meeting.
We say we do that in 2 weeks, and take every board member, they scribble on one of these pieces as to what they feel is important, how they could do it, and then you can put those ideas together, facilities committee can meet with someone, and they
So
can
you
maybe-
guys will meet between now and the
Yeah,
next?
we have a meeting
Yeah.
next week.
Okay.
If everybody had their,
In the meantime, we can email the footprint. We can email all the capital project information out to the whole board electronically, so you can make notes on it.
Right.
Is 2 weeks enough, Greg? But we don't want to meet 2 weeks from tonight, because that's a meeting.
That would stay away from the 21st. So that's no
Yeah, 21st.
So we could do the 20th, Monday night? You want to do Monday night?
Monday night, is that what you said?
Monday night, the 20th?
Sure. Rhonda,
Yeah.
do our numbers really justify 2 softball fields?
Last year, no, this year, hopefully, yes. 'Cause I think with the changing of the coaches, the varsity coach, some kids were tentative on whether they wanted to play or not, but
She
now,
generated some more interest.
but
in
yeah,
the-
now there's a lot more interest,
Okay.
so.
But there's still no baseball field for
You got the
What?
So August 20th,
4 o'clock again, or 5, or what's the preferred time?
Four's good.
Yeah, four's fine.
For August 20th.
Thank you.
Tom, is that right?
Is that
Everybody's
for
good on
everybody,
that?
or is that facility?
That's everybody. That's another
That's
public
another
workshop
continuation.
where we're not pinned into our regular meeting.
And we have facilities next week?
We do, I believe.
Wednesday?
Oh, no,
Wednesday.
it was this Wednesday, so it would be, no.
We don't have one tomorrow, we have one next week.
Yeah, next week.
Next
Oh, yeah,
week.
right,
Just
so that
have-
does work. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does.
Yes, 4 o'clock. And-
4 o'clock on the 20th.
Yes, and, yeah, next Wednesday at 8 o'clock is facilities committee at the high school in the library. And
At 8 a.m.
Yeah.
is the board interested on the 21st? We could do it on the 20th, I guess, but we thought if we could come together at 4:30 on the 21st, you could see the progress in the mini capital project at the high school.
And do a tour over
Do
there.
a tour at
Oh,
high
that'd be
school.
great, yeah.
I'm sorry, we have Tom Zerber coming in for audit
On that date,
on that date, on the next board meeting.
we could do it during the superintendent's report, and anybody could walk over. We'll try to arrange a tour of the progress at the high school in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So at some point.
Just because it's less, before the kids are in there, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the deal.
And we're doing a lot of demo, a lot of work.
And I suggest maybe we have a meeting at the high school, and then we'd have to walk.
Great
around.
idea.
There you go.
Karen, you got that?
Yeah.
That's why I'm naming big ones.
Two
Mayor.
firms.
Does that mean the audit committee's at 4 and the meetings, our meetings at 5?
Yep.
Carol will send out reminders.
Yes.
She's got all that. Okay, thank you.